Secret friends, unite!
Welcome to the Secret Friends Unite podcast, episode 387. This is your guide to the geek side. And before we introduce our hosts, I'll tell you to check out YouTube and subscribe. Leave a comment. We got our 100 subscribers, but we want more, and we want more comments. And after that, subscribe to your favorite RSS feed from your favorite podcast service. Subscribe to all of them on the Secret Friends Unite network feed, and then give us a rating, please, because that lets people know that you are listening and tell us what you think. Good or bad, we'll take it as critical discussion, and we'll consider it. Maybe we'll throw it in the circular file. But I'm your host, Todd Oxtra.
I'll bet it'd be critical no matter what.
Yes. And I am your host, Todd Oxtra, joined by my co-host, Charlie Carden.
Purple Rain, particularly because I'm wearing a purple shirt, which I've decided to, kind of go shirt magic. But this is all three divisions aboard our lovely USS Grand Petoskey, the main ship, our special forces, and then our Marine Corps unit. So USSGrandPetoskey.com. If you're a Star Trek fan, that is our local chapter. We'd love to hear from you. So that's me. And it's a Sunday.
What's our advertising rate these days, Charlie? What are you paying us for that?
2 slips of gold pressed latinum that I'll pay you the next time I see you.
All right. I will take you up on that. But before we do that, this show, we are going to do a new segment for at least 4 weeks this summer before the summer ends. And we're going to do a segment called Does It Hold Up? And week 1, we're going to be going into The Crow from 1994. So we will talk about that on the back end of the show. But before we do that, we're going to check out a comic book cover that all I can say is, I hope this is canon and we see it in the movies. That is Captain America 387 at the mercy of Memoriam.
This is definitely, because this came out it was this time, 32 years ago. This says July of 1991. So I was definitely a reader of the comic at this time, but I have no recollection. This is not a comic that I've gone through like Amazing Spider-Man and say, yeah, I've read them all or whatever. I definitely was a subscriber at this time, but I have no recollection. I don't remember what the Superior Stratagem was. This is part 1 of 6. Okay, so just like we were talking about the pre-roll, a lot of comics would go to bi-monthly or even weekly so that they could crank out like a 6-part story in a summertime and try to capitalize on the kids are home from school and reading comics and whatever the marketing strategy was. Yeah, no clue. Now I'm vaguely curious, Todd. Now you remember, and I think we're about due to have our semi-regular guest host Katie back on to do a rundown of pick a cover. And maybe we'll get lucky enough to get this one to be a part of it. So I don't know.
I will give you the synopsis for this one, Charlie, just really quick, because it's gold, Jerry. It's gold. Memoriam took Diamondback and the other Serpents to the luxury liner SS Superior and offers each a lot of money. Apparently, every passenger of the cruise is a costume villainous. When Captain America, along with John Jameson and Paladin, tracks Diamondback signal there, they are intercepted and downed by Memoriam and some of the other people in this comic. Oh my goodness. Black Mamba, Asp, and Diamondback, along with Nightshade.
That's all the Serpent Society, which again, this is issue 387. In the early 300s, that was, I don't know if Mark Gruenwald was still doing it at this time.
Yes, he was.
But he was doing it back then. So he was the writer of that title for 7 or 8 years. And this was definitely the lower end of his run. But that first part of his run was fire. And he created the Serpent Society. It was organized by Sidewinder. He was the lead dude, and he said, you know what, we're going to be mercenaries. We're going to be costume mercenaries. Our theme is all the same. We're all snake themed. And eventually it all went to shit because one of them decided to it was Viper who outmaneuvered him and orchestrated his death or his demise, and the whole thing fell apart. But it was a whole thing, Cap trying to break them up. And that was when now I want to go back and read it, but I will stop before I get to this because yuck.
It looks bad. Modem. Nobody knows what it is. I'm just going to call it modem.
Yeah,
and assume it was a techno IT version of Modoc.
So with Modem, if you want to defeat him, just unplug him and plug him in again, and he'll be normal.
Yeah. Don't pick up the receiver if it's a dial-up. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, well, that is it for our cover. If you want to check it out, please do Marvel Unlimited or pay the probably 25 cents. You can find this at your local comic book shop. But you know
I
what?
think
Before
so.
you do that, we're going to check in with our gal pal, our senior news correspondent. So without further delay, Madam Webb, take it away.
Now it's time for Madam Webb's rumors and news. Take it away, boys.
Thank you, Madam Webb. Now, as we just saw with that cover, I think we know MODOK is going to be part of the MCU. And this just makes me think that if there is going to be a MODAM, you damn well get that role.
What a play on words. Well, it is a sad week this week in the world of Star Trek and just in the world of entertainment in general. I'm going to walk this one backwards. Earlier in the week, we had the death of veteran character actor David Warner, who had been in untold number of different properties, including Time Bandits, where he played evil. That was a movie. We had our childhood babysitter back when I lived in Grosse Pointe was a huge Monty Python fan and big fan of all things related to British. So Time Bandits was something, probably one of the first VHS tapes we ever watched. And of course, he was the villain, and he was absolutely spectacular in that role. But in the Star Trek world, he was the very noble Klingon Chancellor Gorkon in Star Trek VI. He then played the very sinister There Are Five Lights Cardassian torturer of Captain Picard, Gul Madred, in the 1992 two-part Chain of Command, and also appeared as Saint John Talbot in the very forgettable William Shatner directed Star Trek V. He was the human guy. That was his only non-makeup role in Star Trek. So wonderful actor, will be missed, not only for that, but obviously for everything else that he did. And another passing was a veteran, kind of a heavy of films, actor Paul Sorvino. Both gentlemen were in their 80s. Sounds like Paul Sorvino passed away at the Mayo Clinic, so he was ill. He had a single Star Trek role, but of note, he was Worf's human foster brother who was a social scientist that we saw in an episode late in that run of the series. So very sad. But Tadas, we were talking, it's very sad, but we do have gentlemen who are older, so it's not terribly hard to believe, but that doesn't make it
well-lived lives, right?
Yes.
I mean, they weren't in their 60s, they weren't in their 70s, they lived in over 80 years old. That's a pretty good milestone.
You know, and something that struck us, this is very fresh news for us here today on Sunday, but by the time you're listening to this on Friday, it will have been well dissected, but got news mid-afternoon that on Saturday, Nichelle Nichols passed away at the age of 89. Nichelle played the groundbreaking role of Lieutenant Nyota Uhura in the original Star Trek series from 1966 to 1969, reprising the role in the animated series in 1972, and then in a film series starting in 1979 through 1991, ending with Star Trek VI, which we already mentioned. An incredible, groundbreaking character, an African-American or Black female, an officer on the bridge of a starship set in the future, filled with alien characters of other people of color and other races, and really pioneering what series creator Gene Roddenberry called infinite diversity and infinite combinations. My social media feeds, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, have been filled in the last 5 hours since this news broke of all of their experiences with Nichelle at Comic-Cons, how she was just so absolutely delightful to be around, telling people how much she loved them, giving them a hug, signing long flowing autographs, and just generally being a phenomenal human being. Just last year, she produced or was produced about her documentary called Women in Motion, which is available on Paramount Plus, which is where you probably watch Star Trek anyway, about her extensive role with the NASA space program in the 1980s, moving forward to nearly present day. So just an absolutely incredible woman. She had suffered from ALS for about the last 5 or 6 years, and I have no doubt that that played a role in her death. So very sad, but again, a very well-lived, accomplished life. She is survived by a son who went on to pass along the details of her passing this afternoon. So my club, our Star Trek fan club that I mentioned, we had a meeting just before we had this, and we did observe a moment of silence for Nichelle. and for everything that she's accomplished. So very sad passing, but again, a very well-lived life.
Yeah, very accomplished. So much of her life, even before she joined Star Trek, then after, and all the things she did. And to your point, Charlie, that documentary is fantastic. Loved it to pieces. So definitely pay tribute and see, some of these icons. They leave behind more than just their filmography. So, Godspeed, Missouri.
All right, what else we got? Let's talk about something fun.
Yeah, so we are getting an icon from the 90s, Mr. Max Headroom. He is apparently going to be rebooted at AMC from the Halt and Catch Fire co-creator, and Matt Frewer will return. Max Headroom was such an odd phenomenon. The fact that he was part of it was like a pirate radio type of initiative, as kind of like a thing someone did. That basically they were able to get into the network and host this character named Max Headroom. And it was odd. Well, somebody picked that up and decided to make a series of commercials with Max Headroom, played by Matt Frewer, for like Coke. It was so odd. And then out of that, they decided it should be a TV series that's set in the future about a reporter. His name was Edison. Can't remember his last name. He was basically hit his head, got knocked out, and to save him, essentially his personality got put into a program called Max Headroom, and it was a really fun show. He was a reporter. They were trying to bring down big business because it was all about TV and ads, and it was just a fun show. I really enjoyed it, and he was just one of those odd like pop culture icons that if you didn't know Max Headroom to even look him up, you wouldn't even know existed. But I always thought it was a fun TV show, very fun.
Definitely. I absolutely remember watching that show. To see this coming in, are we getting the vibe that, Frewer to return? My goodness. So Max Headroom, like Data from Star Trek or some other kind of weird construct, he will have aged in some fashion, or will he be, even his original appearance, he was kind of jittery and whatever. So that he's just going to be maybe totally made
heavily makeup. He kind of looked like fake
animated.
Hair.
Yeah, maybe animated in some fashion. So this is cool.
Yeah.
If this was just announced, when will this? If this rolled camera, we'd probably see this potentially next year sometime.
Yeah, probably. Depends on what they need to put in motion. It's AMC, which typically makes good stuff. Elijah Wood is also co-producing this, and it will be unique how this works in a modern age with the internet, and we're all in on it. So I don't know if it'll be like a dramedy. It'll be like something that's poking fun at it, or it'll be like straight up, nope, Max never left, and they're telling more stories with Max. I don't know how the show ended, but it originally started in the BBC. Apparently, It was a little short, and then it got brought over to the US, and actually they moved forward and made it a series in the US. So, well, I am interested to see how this plays out. Well, they said it couldn't be done, but it's being done. And Mr. Batfleck is going to be joining Aquaman, Mr. Jason Momoa, in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. How do we know this? Well, apparently there was a studio tour, and there was a trailer that said BA on it. Not B.A. Baracus, but Ben Affleck. And Jason Momoa got found out on the tour. And he said, this was supposed to be a surprise. And I'm like, okay.
Oh, boy.
Charlie, is DC the most confusing thing in the world? I thought we were moving on.
I thought
these characters, I thought their role was over.
Yeah, it seemed like they were taking a big step away from, the Batman versus Superman. People didn't love it. The Justice League was a mess. People, they had the messy release, and then they had the Snyderverse. But even we were talking to Katie, she was like, I don't need to see a longer version of a film that I thought was shitty in the first place. So that being said, Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman is considered to be a successful part. People like Aquaman, he's getting a sequel. Ezra Miller's Flash is a total mess. What's the deal with bringing back Batfleck? Why are they doing it? What is the size?
Well, he's in the Flash, apparently. He apparently is in the Flash movie too. So I don't know. Maybe this is his swan song to finally end the chapter of these characters in this way we know them.
There's already another Batman in a what I thought was a very successful movie with Robert Pattinson, earlier this year. So this is a bit messy. I mean, and I guess Marvel is kind of getting into that territory as well, but their live action films are following some kind of cohesive narrative with the same characters playing the same actors, or they're clearly identified as being, well, this is it's a whole movie about the multiverse, which they did with Doctor Strange. So yeah, Patrick Stewart showed up, or, they put John Krasinski in as Mr. Fantastic, and it was acknowledged that this is not your set of characters. So is that going to be done in this fashion? That's obviously what the Flash movie is all about, because you've got Michael Keaton coming back, and what other surprises do they have? So this seems very much like to me. You know what I mean? I don't really know what they're going to do with this to make it work.
I don't think this really matters, because Batman didn't die in the Justice League. Aquaman didn't, the movie's happening after the Justice League. So I could see him showing up. And this might have been planned so far in advance, might be part of a contract that they already had, that a lot of these things are done so far in advance. I don't think they pivot very quickly.
Right.
I still think the Flash, they're going to pivot that to be Flashpoint and Ezra Miller's done. And I think they're going to tie up a lot of those loose ends, and they will have a fresh start with some of these characters. That they'll have, some characters will continue, some will not, and we'll get different versions of the characters we all know and love. And Henry Cavill, there was lots of buzz that at San Diego Comic-Con, he was supposed to be brought out, that he was going to be Superman again. Didn't happen.
That's what we need, composite Superman. That's how they're going to fix this. Because that's a character I always loved in the Lego movies, is just trot out a character who's drawn right down the middle. Half of it is Superman, half of it is Batman. So it's got one spike, one cowl, or one, what the hell do you call that? What are the things on top of it? One horn on the side? Yeah, there you go.
It's an ear, probably, because it's a bat, right?
And instead, his face is green instead of, pink. I don't know.
Well, you remember the classic Super Friends episode where Frankenstein, they turned the Superman Frankenstein monster, where it was Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman all in one? That was so fun. You don't remember that?
You know what? I don't, but now I feel like I got to go out and seek it out.
It's fantastic.
I couldn't tell you.
I will find it for you, Charlie.
Yes, please do. Obviously, that will be available on HBO Max. But all right, moving on. So we're still spinning off of San Diego Comic-Con last week, or from the couple of weeks, the news stories are still kind of dribbling out. But Kevin Feige coming out talking about the Fantastic Four film, which we are going to get in 2025 as the end. Did we decide it was the end of Phase 6, or the beginning of Phase 6, or the end of Phase 5?
Beginning of Phase 6, yeah.
Beginning of
the
Phase
2 Avengers
6
movies.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what's essentially the year 2025 is going to be.
A 1-year phase is what they're calling it.
Right. Well, there's a lot really packed into there, but he's really, what Kevin Feige did say in reference to it, and this is something that I think worked incredibly well for Sony and Disney when bringing in Tom Holland as Spider-Man in 2016, 2017, is that we're going to skip the much beleaguered origin story. We don't need it. We know, the majority of people, through basically 3 films, one of which was within the same franchise, people kind of know how the Fantastic Four came to be. It's also something that can be tackled incredibly easy in dialogue or in a simple flashback sequence contained within the film. So this movie is going to jump right into the Fantastic Four, what they're doing, whatever it is going on at the MCU at that time, and kind of the role that they play in it. So very smart. I'm glad to hear this. There are still persistent rumors that Jason Segel will appear as Benjamin Grimm, the Thing, and She-Hulk Attorney at Law, which we're going to have just in a couple of weeks here, but nothing is confirmed. But I would love that, because the Thing is one of my all-time favorite characters. So the sooner or the more that I can see about him, I'm all about it. But yeah, smart decision. I'm sure, Todd, you'll agree that another origin story for a well-established group of characters is highly unnecessary.
It's going to be interesting, though, because Fantastic Four origin, the Fantastic Four is pretty much unknown, except if you saw a crappy movie. And how many people saw the old movie?
Lots.
I just don't know it.
Plenty, but it was 15 years ago. The 2, yeah, with Ian.
And that origin is so dated. They were on because everybody's going to the moon. So I'll be curious how they play that out. Is it going to be like,
right,
they're going to recap it. Are they going to do something to actually keep people up to speed? Because there's kids that don't know crap about the Fantastic Four. They're like 20 years and younger. Probably don't. So I don't know. Spider-Man, Batman, Superman. Yes. Everybody else is probably fair game to say you may not know much about them.
Right,
and
but do you have to take a whole nother film to do an origin story when they obviously want to bring it into synchronization with what's already going to be going? Because they're setting it up. It's if it's this film and then two Avengers films, things have got to be pretty far along, right? So they want to be like, well, let's stop all the momentum we've got and have a long, drawn out entire film about because the original story was there was Reed Richards developed a special rocket engine, but his government funding got pulled. But then he needed to make his space flight in order to prove his technology. Oh, it was his radiation shield, which didn't work because they flew into space and they got hit by the cosmic. Was it cosmic ray? It was cosmic rays because gamma rays was
cosmic rays.
Cosmic rays. They got hit by, and cosmic rays are little like long things that when they hit, they would go tack 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 tack. That was the actual noise made in the comic, bringing it to you. And then the rocket crashed, amazingly exactly where they launched it from. They all got out and they found out that they had powers, and because it was Stan Lee, they talked about it the whole time. Fantastic Four #1, 1961. Go read it. It's there. It won't take you long, and it'll probably be the only one you want to read because it's just kind of scripted that poorly. But I'm glad. I think Marvel has missed the mark a lot less frequently than they've hit it. They've hit the mark a lot less frequently than they've hit it. You know what I'm trying to say. Blah, blah, blah. Tongue stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but Daredevil got an origin story in a Netflix show, but he had a movie with Ben Affleck in it. So I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. I don't think this is a one and done. I think yes, but it was on Netflix, which is one of the most popular things in the world. So once again, I think it's okay to retell the origin if it makes sense. Like I said, if it hasn't been Batman, Superman, or somebody else, largely most people don't pay attention. Like 99% of the population don't know who the Fantastic Four is, and they've never heard of them, and they don't care. So then how do you make them care? Right. If they just show up with 4 people and have a team versus one character, a team, that's a lot of heavy lifting to say, oh, here's all these characters you know nothing about, and now you got to develop their character. It's like the Guardians of the Galaxy, right?
But Todd, the Eternals, look how great that worked out.
Exactly. They show up and now we got 25 characters. Like, why should I care? So maybe their first appearance, though, will maybe not be in that movie. And this is them getting their movie. And maybe that's how you introduce them.
Right. Well, you know what? We have 3 years to figure it out. So, but anyway, it's funny. Here's a cosplay that I thought about doing because you know what? It has that jacket. It covers up the ills, but we're going to get Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. Is that this November? October, November?
No, it's next year, Charlie. It was pushed out.
Wow, that is right. I forgot about that. Man, that's a bummer. But anyway, the character of Spider-Punk, which is Hobie Brown, who's actually the Prowler on our Earth, but on a different Earth, he is a punk rock and roller, anti-establishment individual who also gets bitten by a radioactive spider. And then he has essentially the classic Spider-Man costume, but with certain punk accoutrement, including a spiky mohawk on the outside of the costume and wrist bracelets and a jean jacket with the sleeves torn off and spikes on it. Because what's more rock and roll than that? Anyway, it's one of the figures I have in my collection. Comes with a guitar. But yeah, he is going to be featured in the now obviously super delayed. God, if it comes out next year, that's 5 years between the two films, which I guess that's really not that much. You think about how much space there was between Toy Story stuff, but the merch is showing up in the stores. Are you scrolling through this article? This Twitter drop? Oh,
that's very odd.
That's not good. It's not good to have that much of a delay in the merch because, I mean, figures aren't doing so great anyhow. But yeah, he's from Earth 138. But yeah, gained his powers and became a spider totem, which makes one part of the Spider-Verse. I'm wondering the plot line of this film, if it's going to veer more towards the traditional Spider-Verse storyline that we saw in the comics and kind of the early teens, the late aughts, because I always love that series very much. So, and it's supposed to be ending, which is the comic version of it. So we shall see. But anyway, I love the Spider-Punk, Look forward to seeing him in the story. I don't know that we're getting much information about as far as who might be voicing him. Slated for verse March 29, 2024. What?
No, that doesn't seem right.
It says it right here, man. It's so bizarre. Oh my God. Oh no, wait a second. No, it doesn't. No, okay. Is that, oh, that's the sequel. So yes, you're right. June 2 of 2023, the sequel. The sequel is 2024. Okay, that sounds bad. That's a little bit more palatable.
Yeah.
But anyway,
yeah,
cool character, Todd. I'm sure you don't probably know much about this at all.
Well, he was in the costume was in the Spider-Man game from 2018, so you could play as the character. And I read some of the Spiderverse series, so I'm familiar with the character. But yeah, I mean, this is the fun part you can do with the Spiderverse. You can bring in all these variants of Spider-Man. It's very fun. So I'm all for it. And they made a Spider-Man guitar that kids can buy, because why not?
Right, because for a movie that won't be out for a year, so totally awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Well, last story. Apparently, this is where I'm struggling with owning everything. Is the fact that the MCU and all their characters, everyone is going to be just fighting for screen time between Disney Plus, the movies, whatever. And when you bring in a team like the X-Men, which apparently is going to happen in Phase 7. That's a lot of characters. That's a lot of approach. How to approach it is going to be interesting, how they do approach this and who they'll actually bring in as the actors. Obviously, we got Charles Xavier, who got to be seen in the Doctor Strange film. So it was a lot of fun that we got that callback. But, it will be interesting to see if they play with the other versions of the X-Men, like McAvoy and some of the other characters as well. But, if we think about this, the Phase 6 is ending in 2025, then the nearest or soonest we'll see an X-Men film is 2026.
Right.
Yikes. And people are thinking maybe Deadpool is the way this happens, and there may be a Deadpool movie that essentially brings in the X-Men.
Yeah, I mean, it says it right here. Deadpool 3 has been discussed. It does make note of it that Ryan Reynolds in the upcoming Deadpool 3 would be the exception to that rule, so that is established. But yeah. And and I guess it's really meant to be known if Ryan Reynolds still playing Deadpool will be a continuation of the previous two films, or how's all that going to shake out?
That's a good point, because we already saw Colossus, and we also saw teenage. I always screw up the name. Warhead, Warhead,
teenage Negasonic Warhead.
Yeah. Beyond that, though, I mean, you did get Juggernaut as well, but beyond, you didn't get a lot of other X-Men. So that does leave some untouched where you could play with others. Obviously, Wolverine could be a touchstone. We've always heard there might be a version of Wolverine, which could be, Hugh Jackman, because those two have a rivalry in real life. That could be fun to just bring him in as a version of Logan, maybe Old Man Logan. Because we got Logan, but maybe Old Man Logan could be appropriate. Hugh Jackman, if they want to play with some alternate timelines. But I don't know, Charlie. It's just I'm getting old. We're both getting old. And it's like these things. We start talking about 2025, 2026, and it's like, man, oh man.
I'm thinking we're going to make it that far, but
still,
I don't know.
I mean,
yeah, I hear you.
How are we going to get 3 X-Men films? How are we going to get, Black Panther's only on number 2, and it took them forever to get number 2 out. Miss Marvel is finally getting her second film. Doctor Strange might get a third film. I don't know. So I don't know how they're going to be able to pace themselves at this point with so many characters they're playing with, and people not getting tired of it.
More stuff they're going to have to dump on Disney Plus, because they can crank those out more quickly. There's 52 weeks in a year, and Disney Plus has shown that they're not so afraid to cross stuff over with Star Wars, which they were doing for a while. They didn't want to overlap, but now they are, because we got, they're doing it now. We're going to get in August, we'll get She-Hulk, but then we'll have Andor as well. And then things will continue to what's the next Disney production what's the next MCU production on Disney Plus after She-Hulk? Echo?
I Am Groot.
Not that far down?
No,
I Am Groot? I Am Groot's a one. I Am Groot's a one shot. Yeah. Right,
Well,
but
it's actually little one shots, but yeah.
Right, but as far as the next in continuity kind of ongoing, live action bit, I feel like
Good question.
it might be Echo because that's at least being produced now.
Maybe.
Well, I mean,
No.
like I said, and more to the point, they're not afraid to overlap. They're real. Again, there's only 52 weeks in the year, and the beauty of the streaming in general is that people can watch.
What if season 2 early 2023 is what I'm seeing, but that's not live action.
Right,
Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then
not
Secret Invasion early 2023.
Right. Okay. So really, after She-Hulk, they won't have something for almost 6 months. Which seems very unusual. But again, more to the point, when they get all their chakras aligned and things are cranking along, the beauty of the streaming piece of it is that they're not competing for airspace. It's not like, back when we were kids, and there's 3 networks and you've got to watch must-see TV on Thursday, because if you don't, on April 27th at 8:30, if you don't watch Full House, you're not going to be able to see it until summertime reruns, and then, you're going to have to cut your camping trip short. I mean, it's just... You watch it anywhere, anytime. Watch it 3 o'clock in the morning on your phone on the toilet. Doesn't matter. It's not a big problem.
But marketing dollars are limited. So it's like Disney's not going to pay $1 billion for each. They're going to spend their money accordingly. So and overlapping often, you take the wind out of someone's sails. Like Obi-Wan was still going on when Ms. Marvel launched. I think that kind of hurt it, because it's not like she got her own time just to be by herself. She had to, share the spotlight with Obi-Wan, which is such a big show that ultimately becomes,
people can still go back and see it now. They'd be like,
that's true, but people have,
but it's to be like
short-term memory, Charlie.
Yeah. Right. But if
out of sight, out of mind.
True.
Out of sight, out of mind with so much of the shows like Netflix. I didn't know that came out, and people forget and they move on.
But people like, I just went and saw Thor and I loved it, so now I'm on a Marvel kick. So I didn't end up watching Miss Marvel. And I'm good. It's just, the streaming, as a revolution in television input, particularly post-COVID, is really about the individual and being able to determine kind of their own destiny with how they take things in it and where. So, but again, from a marketing standpoint, that's a complete nightmare. So the only thing they can really promote is the service. That's ultimately how the marketing dollar plays out, is to say, how can Disney Plus get more, hits or clicks or people visibility than Netflix, which, or how do we squeeze out Paramount Plus, or how do we squeeze out Peacock or Hulu or whatever it is. So it's just so very different than even when I was in school learning about advertising, or the time that I worked in radio and television early in my career. It's just very different.
And we're going to see more disruption. And I think the part of the thing that's changing too is we are essentially, we're in the epidemic version of the pandemic, and people aren't stuck at home anymore. So I think we're going to see a lot less people putting eyes on the TV and going out and doing things, going to the theater, going to movies in the theater, going to concerts and things like that. And we're seeing that numbers are not peaking anymore. Netflix didn't grow for the first time. Facebook isn't growing. Peacock Plus is essentially flat. So I think it's a dangerous game to say like people will watch everything.
Right.
I don't think people have enough time anymore. So if you do not have it set aside,
nobody is going to be watching anything on Peacock Plus, because that's not a real service.
I enjoy it. There's some good things there.
It's my favorite, Peacock Plus. Oh, man. Well, anyway, it sounds like that takes us out of the news. But Todd, the time has come. Let's get that gypsy cab. They take cash only, or you can pay in rubles. Get us downtown to Scuggsville, Nasty Town. It's time to go to the Geek Easy. Let's do it.
Talk nerdy to me. Talk nerdy to me.
We're sitting in the Geek Easy, drinks are poured, and we're ready to get our nerd on. So Charlie, as we were chatting before we came on, I thought you talked about this, but you hadn't. But you're bringing up an infamous Stephen King TV series.
Infamous. And again, you're right. It was a 2-part miniseries. And yes, we have talked about it because we were talking about Stephen King in general. April's a huge Stephen King fan. So like in our Voodoo, we have stuff organized. Like we have a Stephen King folder. And I'm a hawk for Voodoo. And like I have a reminder on my calendar, check Voodoo sales, because I have a wish list. So like 1 week a year ago, it's like it was on sale. I had The Langoliers, which was a 2-part miniseries event, one of the networks in 1995. And let me tell you, for the cost of renting out the outside of an airplane and shooting some stuff at Bangor International Airport in Bangor, Maine, and a couple of pickup shots at LAX, you too can turn a Stephen King novel about a group of people who are flying a red-eye flight from LA to Boston and wake up and all but 7 of them have disappeared, and including the pilot, into a 2-part TV movie about a little blind girl who has The Shining and Bronson Pinchot in a very unlikable role. So, Todd, I assume you've seen it.
I have not, because I was warned that it's horrible.
But you know about it. Yeah, you're probably warned by me. Yeah, I remember seeing this. Maybe it was even on in the summer or early fall. Because Todd, you and I met in 95, but it was the fall. So maybe this was, we'd have to get our research drones looking to see actually when this came out. But I know I saw it when it came on, and it looked cheap and crappy at that time. But yeah, it's obviously it's available for purchase on Vudu. It's dirt cheap because it is dirt cheap, very low budget. But yeah, it's about this group of people who are flying, one of them's a little blind girl. She's flying to Boston to have an operation for her eyes. And the other one he's an SAS hitman, a British guy. The pilot is played by actor David Morse. So it's the most notable name besides Bronson Pinchot, who is Balky, of course, from Perfect Strangers, as a very obnoxious businessman. Frankie Faison, who's a black actor who you've seen in a lot of different stuff. He was the obnoxious landlord in Coming to America. That's the most notable role that you could probably think of him as. And then a couple of real no names are featured in it as well. But it's bad. The CGI of the Langoliers, who ends up being the monsters who essentially they eat moments in time as they pass so that time can move forward. But what happened is the plane flies through a rip in the space-time continuum, Todd's favorite plot device, and they essentially end up in a frozen piece of time, and then they have to fight to escape to get back through the hole in the space-time continuum. So they go to Bangor, and then they fly back, and they've got to get back to LA and fly through the hole in the space-time continuum. Do they make it? Do they survive? Blah, blah, blah. At the end of it, a lot of it doesn't make any sense. And the animation of the Langoliers, who are essentially, they're basically meatballs with cornered mouths with razor sharp teeth, and they dissolve or they eat things and make stuff collapse, and that's how time passes. Stephen King did a lot of cocaine in the 80s, and let me just leave it at that.
I'm looking at pictures now, and wow, it's amazing. Yeah,
but it was
great.
We were kicking around because the Stephen King, like a couple of months ago, there was like, buy these 8 Stephen King movies for like $20 or something. So I did that. So I put it in the folder. I'm like, let's scroll through the folder and let's watch something. Yeah, we've seen Cujo. We've seen Pet Sematary a bunch of times. We've seen, Thinner. We've never watched The Langoliers. You want to do it? It's 3 hours long because it was 2 90-minute segments, or maybe it was out over 3 days because it's actually 3 hours. Yeah. And I would say not a moment wasted, but not a moment used smartly is what all I can say about it. Oh, but other than that, and I feel go ahead, please.
I was going to say, so it doesn't hold up?
Todd, it literally didn't hold up when I watched it 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago. Oh my God. Yeah, it's bad. But if you want to chuckle, if it's one of those Vudu watch free with commercials, go for it. It's a giggle. Especially if you're a completist of some variety of Stephen King stuff, which always with April, she was like, I got to see everything that's out there. That did not keep us from not watching the new version of Firestarter, which is available on Peacock.
No!
Oh,
yeah,
no,
I heard that was worthless.
That was about 20 minutes in, and it was like, it's no dice. Something I did really love that I saw this weekend, and I feel bad because I had a bad night's sleep on Friday, so I was a little drowsy. So I did drowse off a little bit during this movie, and I really wish I hadn't, because we saw it like 2:00 in the afternoon. But the DC League of Super Pets, Todd, this is one of our stalwart holdouts for the end of our movie league. We have this, and we have Bullet Train, which comes out next weekend, are the last things. Bullet Train, Money Train.
Got 5 weeks for somebody to derail
Yeah.
The black phone.
Right, exactly, to get it out of the top 10. But this was really fun. So this was essentially, there have been commercials going around about this forever. We have just a very fun romp in the spirit of The Secret Life of Pets and a lot of the other films. Now, this is not a Pixar, but this is probably a DreamWorks, I'm guessing.
It's
without...
DC Animation. It's Warner Brothers
Yeah,
Animation.
there you go.
Which I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know who actually what else they do.
Right.
They did the Lego movies, I believe. Beyond that,
Right. But anyway, this is very fun. So obviously, your main character in this is Crypto, who is voiced by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You've got John Krasinski, who's voicing Superman as his owner. They started out in a very fun way. Todd, you're going to go see it, I assume, right? Potentially.
I am I mean, unless I'm really bored and need something to do, I would probably just wait to see it on HBO Max because it's coming in 45 days. Well, but if my mom wants it, my mom's coming in a couple weeks to visit. If we're bored and we need something to do, maybe we'll go see it on a Tuesday.
So I won't. Again, I won't reveal any critical plot points because there really aren't any. It's an animated movie for kids, but yeah, it takes Superman right from his birth, but instead of flying away in that pod off of Krypton and birth, Crypto jumps in there with him, so they're together his whole life, and I think that's really fun and cute. And I don't call that a spoiler because you can see it coming a mile away. Oh, sure. But it's fun. It's fun. Yeah, John Krasinski is Superman, Olivia Wilde is Wonder Woman, but then you do get this host, and really the Justice League themselves are really very minor characters in this because it's really about the pets. Your other, you have basically an animal rescue. Filled with other animals that get superpowers, the lead one of which is Ace the Bat Hound, voiced by Kevin Hart. You also get, and I'm going to forget the names of the characters, but you get a Wonder Pig who's voiced by Vanessa Bayer. You get now I'm forgetting who the other voice actor. You get basically a squirrel that shoots lightning out of its hands, who ends up being a Green Lantern, and it's turtle. And you get a turtle who's voiced by Natasha Lyonne. She did a really great job of that, I thought.
Nice.
This was a lot of fun. I would love it if it was taken off more than it is. It's going to snag about 23 million domestic, which is kind of a bummer. I would love to see it be more of a hit. It's endlessly smarter within its own realm than what I'm sure the Minions movie was, which looked just absolutely dreadful. I know in all the trailers, and it was literally the only movie
for toddlers.
Yeah. This was literally the Minions is literally the only movie of this summer of the 11 that John and I have in our brackets that April said, I will not see that movie. And we went and saw the previous ones, but it's just too bad. This is fun. Does it bring anything outrageously different to the table? Absolutely not. But it's a giggle. They poke a lot of fun at little superhero related things, little DC related things. So it's good. Todd, I think you would enjoy it. But again, if you end up seeing it on HBO Max, you're not really missed much. So, but anyway, sure. For the kids out there, if you're listening to the sound of my voice, hopefully not with children, but if you have children or if you love this kind of stuff, I would definitely consider checking this out. Go pump it up, help my movie league bracket because I think I put it way too high.
Yeah, it's funny because once Logan got of a certain age, he's just not big into going to movies. So I really don't have an excuse to go see an animated film unless it was something like unique or different. I'm like, this one looks like normal fare. I like the DC animated stuff. They always do a good job. It's by the same folks. The guy who directed this directed, I believe, Lego Batman. So they do a good job with the puns and the inside jokes.
Yeah, I mean, Lego Batman was absolutely delightful.
Oh, great movie.
It's great.
That was
stuff,
fantastic.
So,
yeah, couldn't miss out on that. Yeah.
All right, so what do you got? Yeah, The Paper Girls is out. I didn't watch it, but when I saw a thing for it, it made me think of you. So how is it?
Yeah, it's funny because we're talking about what are streaming services doing? How are they dropping their content? And Paper Girls, they dropped all the episodes at once, which is odd. And this is on Amazon Prime because normally they don't. They only put a couple of episodes like some of their shows. And I'm like, because like The Boys, I think it's the first two got dropped and then you had to go weekly. So it's interesting why they dropped all of these at once, but I watched the first two. This is a show that's set in 1988. This is based on a comic book by Brian K. Vaughan and drawn by Cliff Chang. Great book. And essentially it came out about the same time as Stranger Things did. So these will get a lot of comparisons, even though essentially the comic book came out at the same time. But regardless, this is 4 girls who run paper routes, and they're called the Paper Girls because this is at the same time where there weren't girls doing this type of thing, running paper routes at the time. And it's a coming of age. They're probably all about 14-ish, becoming women. And all of them are different. The girls are, one's poor kid, kind of on the having a tough time. There's one girl, she is Chinese, first generation, struggling with her mom's, not being able to speak English, and not being liked very well in a town where essentially jobs are being taken away by Japanese automakers. So people think she's Japanese. And there's a lot of pushback, a lot of racism. There's a black girl who is kind of like, she's the uber smart, uber talented. She's the one that's going to succeed. And then you've got one girl who's a Jewish girl who's part of the rich family, who's kind of a sporto. So they've all got unique personalities. And I won't give too much away, but it is a lot of fun. It is a slower moving series based on the first episode. And this is more of I would say, a time travel show. And the interesting part, which you've seen, it's not a spoiler because you've seen in the trailer, but essentially the one girl, Erin, who is Chinese, essentially meets her adult version of herself. And let's just put it this way. She's not impressed by her adult version. She's like, and they have a very interesting, very revealing conversation, that's kind of like if your younger self met your current self, it's like, what would they have to say seeing where you are now? And it's like, oh, that's an interesting dynamic. So it's the time travel part I'm struggling with. That's the part that I'm like, it doesn't feel very clear yet, but there is, I think, 10 episodes. And they're about 30 to 40 minutes long, so not too long. So I really like the second episode more than the first, because the second episode really kind of drove those identities of the girls, the relationships, and there's some undertones that are revealed at the end of the first episode or second episode, which I think will carry it forward. I didn't read the whole line of Paper Girls, but I did feel like the pacing was much better. So that's something I've heard about the show. It's a little slower pacing, but what it does some pretty good things. So, but it's like, again, Stranger Things, but with time travel, and takes mostly in modern day, which is kind of interesting. So, if you're interested, check out the first episode, but I would say watch at least the first two. The first episode, I don't think you're going to walk away very impressed. I think the second episode is where it really picks up and moves forward.
That's the juice. The juice gets the squeeze, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And then lastly, Umbrella Academy Season 2. It's a series. I watched the first episode and I'm like, something else grabbed my attention, like as it does. And I start a lot of things, don't always finish them. But this one, I'm like,
look, a blue car.
Exactly. I get distracted because I always like to watch new things and see what hooks me. But I always wanted to get back to the Umbrella Academy after season 1, which I loved. Season 2, the first episode, I will say they're in 1960s Texas, Dallas, and their mission.
I've heard of it. I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, their mission is something to do with the Kennedy assassination, and it pivots, but it's kind of a cool look at 60s, the society and the mission and these characters. The heavy lifting of season 1 is done, but now it's like, how are they reacting, being divided again in Dallas, Texas, and then how are they get brought back together? So I'm very excited. I finished the second season, got Chris hooked on it, so we were watching it together. We just couldn't stop, and really enjoyed it quite a bit. So season 3 just dropped, and I'm going to start jumping in on that because it looks really fun. It's, once again, time travel happens. Things are up, and the world is not the same as they left it when they get back to night.
Look at you watching a whole show. I am so proud of you, Toddy. Good work.
Charlie, I tend to get back to these things. I'm going to get back to Lock and Key. I'm going to get back to Wheel of Time. Those are on my list of shows to watch.
A list, you and your list. Tad, your new nickname is going to be Listicles.
I have to have a list, or I'll forget what I was going to watch. So
good stuff. Well, something that we never need a list for is how to find the Air Qantas app, because that's right. It's time to take it to the land down under. That's right. It's time for the Thunderdome. We got to get down there, get in front of the mutants, because we got something crazy to talk about. So let's party.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
Thank you, Tina. We're sitting in the Thunderdome where we've gathered the mutants for a topic or a game to be entertained. And this week, we're doing a topic. I mentioned at the top of the show, we're doing a new one called Does It Hold Up? So for week 1, we're going to check out a movie that some of us have never seen, or we saw it so long ago, we forgot most of it. So it's now we're going to watch it with modern eyes to see what we think of it with our modern lens. So there we go. So The Crow, this came out in 1994. I was going to my sophomore year, Charlie. I was a maintenance person. I stayed at Hubbard Hall over the summer. I cleaned the dorms. I actually was I basically acted like kind of an RA for summer camps as well, which was kind of cool. Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed that. Yeah.
I mean, that's how, and it wasn't 94 because that's when I got out of high school, but in the summer of 95, early in the summer of 95, because I took a job at Holden Hall, so across campus from where you were, but your ace number one buddy, Steve Borowski, was going to be an RA on my floor. He was there 2-3 weeks early, just like I was, getting things ready. I was getting things organized, whatever it is. And because we were the two guys around, we became friends. And then when everything started showing up, you were his sweet mate. That's how you and I met. So this was the fall of 95. Watching reruns of Welcome Back, Kotter and Earthworm Jim, and you exposed me to weird comics like Milk and Cheese. And it was the beginning of our bromance.
It was a different time,
25
folks.
years going strong, almost 30.
It was a different time. The world was in a different mode. And I was big. I gotten back into comics in college because there was a comic shop that I could just bike to on every Wednesday after class. Got out, go over there, play some arcade games, Pinball Pete's, get my comics, have a good time. I'm trying to remember the name of that comic book shop. It was right on the corner by BW3s. Forgot what it was called. Grumpy owner, kind of a hipster, but I got my comics there. So, but I started getting into comics that summer because there was a guy that was also at the dorms, and he introduced me into a lot of like deep cuts, like Watchmen and things like that. Really enjoyed it. And one book that I read a little bit of was The Crow. And then I was super excited when The Crow was announced to be made. I'm like, The Crow? Really? This is like so odd because this was an independent book that nobody knew about, had a little bit of a following, but apparently somebody signed it. And so essentially this movie, directed by Alex Proyas, who was basically a music video director, did some stuff on MTV for, I think, Nine Inch Nails, some other bands, got this film. Brandon Lee's in this movie, Ernie Hudson, Michael Wilcott, a few others. Budget of $23 million, made $94 million. So very successful for an indie film.
Big time.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to note is it was the time of movie soundtracks. And movie soundtracks were huge. This was number one soundtrack for a long time. Had a Stone Temple Pilots song that was number one as well that came off of this. I love the soundtrack. It was so good. I bought it. I absolutely loved it. But it was that like cutting edge 93X type of music. Grunt. It was like a little bit post grunge, but it was kind of that music. So this was a theme of this movie. So the premise of this movie is, the night before his wedding, musician Eric Draven, played by Brendan Lee, and his fiancée are brutally murdered by members of a violent inner-city gang. On the anniversary of their death, Eric rises from the grave and assumes the gothic mantle of the Crow, a supernatural avenger, tracking down the thugs responsible for the crimes and mercilessly murdering them. Eric eventually confronts head gangster Top Dollar, played by Michael Wincott, to complete his macabre mission. So the Crow comic book, I believe it was individual series. And yes, absolutely. This is all about basically this Crow finds spirits who've been done wrong, brings them back to life. And the Crow is kind of like a totem. If you kill the Crow, you will take away the ability for this person that resurrects to become essentially
immortal and indestructible.
Immortal, yeah, indestructible. I think they have a little bit of superpowers. They can be super athletic, maybe a little bit stronger, but can't be killed. So there we go, Charlie.
They can do flips and shit, and even though he's been dead for a year, he didn't decompose, and he still has blood because when he gets shot, he bleeds, which wouldn't happen with the corpse. But wow, this was it was very dark, and it was very rainy. Set in my hometown of Detroit, Michigan. I wouldn't say I was intimately familiar with the whole Devil's Night thing. This was a movie I think that my brother, now this came out in May, and then maybe that Halloween or subsequently, because my brother went to Western Michigan University, also here in West Michigan, for a year or so. And I feel like maybe we were home at the same time, and the VHS of this found its way from Blockbuster, because there's a Blockbuster in Easttown not far from here, so maybe found its way over. And so it's like a Friday night, and I'm home for the weekend, and all the lights are off, and we're watching this movie. And it was just, man, it was just everything that the 90s was, man. Dark, like you said, grungy music. You got a bunch of toughs acting tough with their leather and their stringy hair, and everybody says motherfucker really weird and god damn it really weird. That's a hallmark of 90s movies. They did that a lot in The Matrix, which really rubbed me the wrong ways. God damn it, motherfucker. You know, it was just a very 90s kind of thing.
I understand you feel that way. I've never noticed that, I guess.
It's just a weird thing, and maybe it's simply being someone who, as a writer, has really paid attention to dialogue in the way, and working in even just theater when I was in high school, and being around like a dialect coach, you just tend to think about things like that. It's just really bizarre. It's just really very stylized.
Probably a lot of Canadians. They just bring a lot of Canadians in and try to act American.
Did. And what's funny is that this movie was entirely shot in North Carolina, which was film credit wise, was very big in the late 80s or in early 90s. Like, it's just, names, Dawson's Creek was shot there. I think one of the Empire Records, I'm thinking like small independent films. So it was obviously people got a lot of mileage out of their dollars. But this was a film that I feel like was more shot on a soundstage because of the darkness and the raining and the different stuff. And yeah, it seemed like no part of this was during the day. It was even darker and uglier than Gotham City, ever could have been. And, Tim Burton tried really very hard in his 2 Batman films to make Gotham City very dark and gothic with the crazy statues and all this different stuff that he did with that. But, I can scarcely think, and again, reflecting on our own childhood, in this movie, of course, we'll go on to talk about how it was essentially mired in tragedy because of an onset death. But this film, because of that onset death, which had to do with Brandon Lee, the star of the film, who's most famously the son of martial artist Bruce Lee, who was huge in the 1970s and also died. Did Bruce Lee die in kind of on the line? Did he die and was something related to? I remember seeing his biopic. I think he was actually played by his son in his biopic. I feel like
he died of a brain aneurysm, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't killed on set or anything like that. But yeah,
right.
They got most of this movie filmed, but not all of it was filmed with Brandon Lee. Right. They had to use some technology. They used basically body doubles to finish this film. And I can't imagine having to come back on set, do things after such a tragedy occurred.
I mean, they pushed it to the point that this film was funded and was going to be distributed by Paramount Pictures, one of the biggest studios in the world. They shelved it, and Miramax, which was, the less said about Miramax and Harvey Weinstein in this current day and age, the better. But Miramax, around the same period of time, gave us Clerks, which launched Kevin Smith's career. Yep. They came in, they put an extra $8 or $10 million in it to finish it, and they put it out, so they made that money. They made their investment by taking on something kind of unpleasant, which was, a scandal. And it's a very sad story because it's described in the IMDb page exactly what happened. A prop gun had not been properly unloaded from a prior use. And so it was one of these that I believe the wad and then some of the fusing and the packing fired still with sufficient velocity and struck Brandon Lee in the abdomen and killed him. The same kind of thing happened. I know we've talked about it, but that series Voyagers that I loved in the early 80s, the star of that show, John Eric Hexum, after that show was canceled, he went on to his next job, had a prop gun in his hand, and at the end of the day, he was, making a shoot myself motion. Gun went off, fired the wadding into his brain and killed him. So, moral of the story is
Alec Baldwin just accidentally shot someone. So this isn't something that's gotten better over time, apparently.
Yeah, you think with digital technology, it wouldn't be necessary to load guns at all. But it's still happening. Yeah.
Apparently. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a tragic tale. This is his final memory, though. And they say for Brandon and someone else at the film, I can't remember who the other person was that apparently passed away as well. But it's fitting that there's a memory of him that now people can remember him from. But it's tragedy that it actually had to occur. So, and then Miramax, I mean, they were as much part of the 90s as anything else. And out of Miramax came Dimension Films, which came Scream, which, talk about success. But, the fact, like I said, budget of 23 million, made 94 million. This is was at the time, that's a lot of money for a small film that, not much was expected, especially with essentially a franchise or IP that has we talk about, Fantastic Four, people even barely knowing them. Nobody knew about the Crow. So the fact that this did so well, that was amazing. And $94 million in 1994 money, that's pretty damn good. That'd probably be like $400 million today.
Well, hold on. You know that I'm going to have that up on my my
inflation calculator.
My conversion calculator.
Movie tickets calculator.
Hold on. Let's see here. So we're talking about. I know this is great radio, folks. I know it. 1994. And 94.
So what do you think, folks? $94 million numbers. Yep. We're going to get these punched in. Charlie's going to give us the number.
The number will shock you at coming in at $179,748,091.60.
And that will probably beat Lightyear at the box office by almost double.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
How crazy is that? Yeah,
sadly. But an enormous success for an independent film that, again, Todd, much like the Wachowskis 5 years later with The Matrix, really struck a chord for popular culture, youth culture in so much as counterculture and Gen X, which is our generation, the whatever generation, our people, and really how things played out for them. So it is at a moment in time, but then again, to answer your question, does it hold up? I'm going to say no. I'm not going to look at it in the same lens as I might look at what I would consider a really great modern film. But in 20 years, that really great modern film, I may feel the same way about it. It may seem too topical, but like I said, the scripting, things like scripting and dramatic effects aren't always going to play out so great. But maybe I would have a different perspective had I read the comics or had an affinity for them. Maybe it was really great and true to the source material, but it doesn't really need to hold up, I guess, is my answer for it. Because again, Todd, in 1994, I was 18, you were 19, we were young men, we were experiencing, to be life in college and having our whole future ahead of us. And in a way, everything was great and fun and wonderful. And this encapsulates that period of time when, you had the street toughs that had the, big stringy long hair and ripped up jean jackets, and they were brandishing guns and they were doing drugs, and it was all edgy. It was all super edgelord with the Nine Inch Nails soundtrack, and it was raining all the time, and the Crow was painted up like the Joker and, wearing his stretchy clothes and kicking and stabbing. And it was that's the 90s right there. This plus Clerks plus The Matrix plus Empire Records equals the 90s. You get it from all sides.
Yeah, and reading some of the comics, this was remarkably faithful to the comic, which I think is impressive that they actually got the opportunity to put some of these scenes, especially the pawn shop scene, that was from almost scene for scene from the comic. So I think 28 years later, compared to other comic book movies, I think this holds up much better than most of them did. The Phantom, all those movies. So watching it again, I actually was really entertained. So I appreciate it. Yes, there's some nostalgia, but once again, I'll call out crap if it looks like crap. But I think there were some special effects that did not age well, where you could see this looked like a model, or the Crow looked like it was on like a bad CGI background. And this is where CGI was just starting too. So with a $23 million budget, I think for what they did, I think they pulled it off, and they did a great job for what it was.
For sure, the CGI head and shoulders above the Langoliers, which came
because I think this is right around a T2. Abyss. To do things like that on a shoestring budget, ILM is not helping them out.
Right. A few years remarkably, but if you look at the effects house that pulled this off, it was probably two guys in a tin can. But probably. Still, but still, like you said, Alex Portreas, who is the guy who came from MTV, whatever it is. So within his skill set and his obvious style, I think it fits the bill.
That's
And
why,
again,
I was going to say that's why music was a big part of it, because of the video scene, where a lot of the directors came from that. David Fincher did videos as well. He went on to make like Dark City, which is kind of a cool film for the time. Predated The Matrix, was kind of neat, and he did some other things after that. But the fun part about this is, so I would say, I think it, for me, it did hold up, but I get it, because a little bit of it is going to be tinged from, but when I watched it, I'm like, it was watchable. I enjoyed it. So it's a split vote.
Watchable. I did enjoy it. Hold it up to a modern lens, not so much. But again, more of a capsule in time, which I appreciated it. But do I think it stands test of time? I don't think so.
Oh yeah, it's not, and that's the hard part. It's like, does it stand up or is it watchable? It's better. Does it hold up or is it watchable? Is probably the better thing. Some of these may not be watchable.
We will change that for the next segment. Could you stand it, or did it make you want to throw up? It's the puke test. I just renamed the segment. It's the puke test,
like the Bechdel test, but it's like the puke tell test. Yes. Does it make you puke? Yeah. So just a few other notes here. We are getting essentially a reboot of The Crow starring Bill Skarsgård that essentially is going to be rebooted. So that'd be interesting to see.
Okay.
What do they do with the property?
He's great talent. I love him. So I don't know that he's done anything that I can think of that I didn't really enjoy.
That he won't scare the poop out of you? Yeah, I don't know. Can he be a hero? Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. So, well, it's cool. I'll go see it, and I'll think about our experience here without a doubt.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm like, I know they made other Crow things that I did not see. Or maybe I saw the second movie, but the Crow is set up to be, you can essentially do anthologies because the Crow can rescue anyone and turn them to redeem themselves. So it's set up there. So we got the Crow as a follow-up, City of Angels in 1996 with Vincent Perez, Mia Kirshner, Richard Brooks. Got a 4.6 on the rating scale. Probably not too good. We got the Crow, Stairway to Heaven. In 1998, 1999. I'm not sure if this was a series or not. With Mark Dacascos.
Subsequently sued by the estate of John Bonham.
Maybe. Then Crow Salvation with Kirsten Dunst was in this, and it came out in 2000.
Essentially, you did a lot more research than me, but the last line in that first, either I was looking at Wikipedia or I was looking at the bottom of IMDb, said there were subsequent sequels, there was television series, none of which captured the success of the original.
Yeah, and lastly, we got one last one. It was The Crow, Wicked Prayer, 2005, and Tara Reid apparently was in this one, and also David Boreanaz and Edward Furlong. Charlie, Edward Furlong.
There's a guy who's done a lot with his career since then.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Cemetery 2, Terminator 2.
Yeah, exactly. I think the most you saw him was in a mugshot. That's what you got out of him.
Poor kid.
Oh, yeah. I know. True enough, yeah.
Oh, well, folks, let us know. It was actually on Paramount Plus until today. It's not there anymore. So I don't know where you can watch it. So it was precipitous for us, Charlie. Good for us. It may go to another streaming service, but if you can check it out. I think it's highly entertaining based on just a snapshot of the 90s.
I would say it's certainly if you're someone who is in our age bracket, a Gen Xer, you will enjoy. It was funny. I was talking to April, who was much more into hard rock and things like that than I was back in those days. I'm like, you've not seen this movie? She says, no. I mean, April had my stepdaughter very young. She was like, no, I was an adult then. I just thought the movie looked stupid, so I never saw it. I'm like, okay, I can accept that. But it's worth a watch now, I think. So anyway.
And Charlie, next week we're going to do the Goonies. So we need maybe we can get some people on that actually would like to talk about the Goonies. So I don't know. We'll figure out maybe if we can get a co-star to be on to talk about the Goonies next week.
That sounds very, I might have someone in mind. We'll see what happens. We'll see about that. But very good. But that is the end of our program. So friends, thank you as always for joining us. Todd, where do people find you out on the social medias?
Yes, they can follow me on Twitter at Toxtra. I'm always talking about video games, fun things I like, recommendations for building my geek den. So if you've got any of those, let me know. But yeah, other than that, just I want people to go and find me on YouTube at Secret Friends Unite and www.secretfriendsunite.com and check out our stuff.
Plug. Friends, you can find me over on Twitter at the C3. Go ahead and spell that out. My lovely wife, April, and I do run the USS Grand Petoskey. That is a Michigan chapter of the Starfleet, the Star Trek International Fan Club. You can find us at a website of that same name and on all social medias. I also do try to populate our Secret Friends Unite Facebook groups with content from time to time to keep the conversation going. So please come check us out there. So as always, friends, again, one more time, thank you for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring and to keep on trucking.
Be the hero, not the villain.
In a truck.
Fire it up, fire it up, fire it up.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow at Secret Friends U on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.